Hey there, film fans! Thanks for stopping by J.O.'s Hollywood Drive. Every other week, we're going to take the scenic route of what's new in theaters, and I'll have the keys to letting you know what flicks to floor it to, and when you should save yourself the trip. Rating movies on both a conventional cinema scale and what kind of viewer might see, rent, or skip it. Now, I think we all know most Hollywood cinema plays to males ages 18 to 35, and with such hits as Anchorman, Superbad, and Knocked Up, Judd Apatow could be said to be a director who plays harder to those seats than most. But what happens when the now 45-year-old director starts aging up his material in This Is 40? Well...
I think this room has rodents. Just saw it! Now you see my starfish? What if my starfish?
What's that saying? Youth is fleeting, but immaturity is forever? Yes, this is 40. At least this is 40 if you happen to be married with kids in a white-collar, upper-level suburbanite environment, surrounded by white Apple products and white bread that you can't eat because you're watching your carb intake, but you leave it on a white porcelain plate on the counter because it looks nice. Yeah. Now, this movie could be seen as something of a hard left for Apatow. Personal, harsh, and bitterly comedic, but unfortunately, less accessible. Humor-wise, is that same balance of othering-based mockery mixed with biting truth, but ultimately gentle acceptance, that makes Apatow's comedies so successful. They're both positive and kinda mean. Some jokes land, others don't, but a lot of it's going to depend on your tolerance for the subjects of examination, which in this movie are whiny, rich, white people. Oh. That's not to say there aren't many families out there like Pete and Debbie, the returning side couple from Knocked Up, now at the center of their own movie, and once again played by Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann. There are plenty of families like this. But they're not really the audience for this movie, and the audience for this movie, cynical, disenfranchised, college students, dropouts, and graduates, generally doesn't like these people. Pressure to lose your V-card, getting knocked up, being faced with maturity you're not ready for, those are conflicts people of all ages can connect to. Paul Rudd not getting to eat cupcakes and being forced to live in a slightly smaller house because he mismanaged his money and might be 2 pounds overweight, if that. Ugh. I think the only ones crying for him are all the dogs howling from the whine of the world's smallest violin between my fingers. So, it's to the film's credit that I can't say it's an unpleasant movie. By all rights, it should be. Even in its lighthearted moments, This Is 40 is more bitter and condemning than almost any previous Apatow film. You find yourself defending the least selfish and awful character in any argument against a more terrible person, only for it to flip-flop the very next scene. And moreover, there's no real plot or driving force to hold this all together, just scheduled suburban day after day leading up to disastrous vacation, after birthday, after supposed celebration. So, why isn't it unpleasant? Well, for one thing, the performances by Rudd and Mann are strong, and there is something admirable about that, even inside of unlikable characters. And for another thing, there are moments where you find the movie agreeing with you unexpectedly, like, am I supposed to like this family? They deserve everything they're getting. Yeah, what a bunch of whiny, self-entitled dicks. Oh, eat the cupcake, Paul Rudd. I could fit like 4 of you in a fanny pack. You're not fat. Eat the damn cupcake. Fuck's sake. Fuck's sake. Unfortunately, I don't think that was the movie's goal, and to its credit, it can be added to that rare and challenging corral of films that pose the very real question, do miserable people deserve to be happy? It just does it much more poorly than the best films of this kind, because Apatow can never really decide if these people are horrible or just normal. Pretty sure he's lost touch with actual normalcy, and that's the entire problem. Again, Paul Rudd is not overweight. He rides bikes every day, and he's still judged on his weight. What is this, Hollywood Boulevard? Oh yeah, wait, it is. There are no consequences, no stakes. It's a series of good performances and decent jokes mired by esoteric execution. This director and cast can do much better. This viewer review from Chris Barfield puts it pretty well. Apatow's latest has the same loose improv feeling with an underlying honesty as his previous features, but is missing a driving conflict to move the plot forward. Without that element, we're left with sometimes funny and sometimes irritating observations on suburbanites and aging. It's the first Apatow movie where I said, yeah, I get it, multiple times. I give it 2 stars out of 4 on the cinema scale. Go see it if you're a big fan of Judd Apatow comedies, although be warned, it's a little different from his previous works. Rent it if you want something mildly raunchy and funny for a Sunday night, and skip it if you don't want to sit through over 2 hours of rich, white man children pretending they have real problems. Ugh, gag me. In stark contrast to that...
Let's get to it.
My name is Dr. King Schultz. This is my valet, Django.
Come on over. We got a fight going on that's a good bit of fun.
Well, I closed with a viewer review last time, but Scott Hattlesey does a great job of introducing this next flick. The never-ending stream of genre-defining Tarantino films continues with the 39th unofficial sequel to Corbucci's influential 1966 hit Django. In his most recent masterpiece, Quentin appeals to all audiences with the stomach to bear exploding horse heads and countless profanities. Even the zero sad, lonely people on this planet who don't love everything about his movies will be pleased to hear that his inexplicable Aussie ass is blown sky high in the middle of the third act. With another placeholder in my top 10, Tarantino has renewed my cautious confidence as Kill Bill 3 approaches. Yeah, what sad, fun-hating individual doesn't love everything about Tarantino's works and doesn't find him to be the seminal director of our age? Stop that. Okay, it's true. I'm not all that into Tarantino. Nothing against him. I love Reservoir Dogs, I liked Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Basterds was... I liked Pulp Fiction, but many film buffs, particularly students, have a passionate love affair with his oeuvre that I don't entirely comprehend. His work never grips me deep down as it does many, and he's an excellent director, so I'm pretty sure it's just a failing of mine, but let's lay that all aside, because my hair was thoroughly blown back by his latest. Partially because if there's one thing Tarantino isn't known for, it's, well, depth. And yet, Django Unchained is almost as profound as it is fun, if that's possible, and effortlessly so. Tarantino's signature long takes, hyper-violence, and genre pastiche work better here than they have in over 10 years to my eyes, largely due to sympathetic leads Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz, contrasted with the overpowering and thought-provoking menace of DiCaprio and Sam Jackson. My personal proclivities make me a little less of a Tarantino adorer than most critics, but another personal experience of mine is being raised in the rural South. And this made the movie's demonization of the Confederacy and pre-Civil War era two-faced poisonous Southern hospitality especially potent. Or in other words, this movie cuts through some old bullshit. If you can let go of the contextual shocks, the outrageous gore, uncomfortable language, and hyper-sensationalizing of savage material, there is some powerful subtext to Django Unchained that refuses to stay shackled down. Unpredictable, unique, and under a third of its length while you're watching it, occasional overindulgence may be its only flaw. Never has a Tarantino revenge fantasy seemed so justified, and at the same time so complex, without taking itself so seriously that it can't be enjoyed for what it is. A well-shot, well-paced spaghetti western with extra ragu.
Adult supervision is required.
Solid 3.5 out of 4 on the cinema scale. Go see it if you want a shocking, gripping, and incredibly fun time at the movies. Rent it if you're a little waffly on the subject matter and want to digest its monster runtime with some friendly discussion or something. And skip it if you are averse to blood fountaining squibs or a certain slur makes you a little faint. Yeah.
Somewhere beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see?
The movie musical! And not just any movie musical, one of the most beloved operettas of all time! And with good reason. Hugo's sweeping mega novel was adapted quite snugly to the stage 30 years ago, and both versions have been embraced for their emotional impact, unforgettable quotes and lyrics, and impactful themes. Myself, I've been a fan since I was 8 years old. Musical, book, abridged version to be fair, and even the 90s movie starring Liam Neeson, which wasn't a sweeping epic so much as a simple character drama, but got by on superb performances from the lead actors, humbler execution aside. Tom Hooper's fully realized adaptation of the musical version has been highly anticipated all year, and I was among the most excited superfans at the front of the line. So it's no surprise that this movie had me in tears. Unfortunately, they were tears of disappointment. I'll let Hannah's submitted review broach the topic for me. Sweeping, epic, and poorly shot, Les Miserables is divisive. Fans of good old redemption stories, glossy epics, and historical tragedies will sink their teeth into it. There was endless applause on my first showing, replete with tears and choked sobs. There was not a wet eye in the house on my second trip, with the occasional chuckle whenever Jackman sang. I personally loved it, except for Hooper's truly shoddy direction in terms of framing, and plan on going 3 more times, but your mileage may vary. Test the waters by previewing the soundtrack and see if it's your cup of tea. 4 out of 5. Divisive is truly the best word for this misguided adaptation, which is leaving many critics with their thumbs at half-mast, unsure of why they neither love nor hate it. Not a divide amongst the critical body, but within critical bodies. And I'm in the same boat. Except I know exactly what divides my feelings in Hooper's Les Miserables, and it's blisteringly simple.
I might have known the bitch could bite. I might have known the cat had claws. I might have guessed your little secret.
Outstanding acting performances versus absolutely horrid direction. Right off the bat, I feel obligated to dispel the misconception that recording the singing live on set in any way hurt the movie. Because it was the focal point of the movie's marketing, many have decided to blame it for the reason the movie musical fails to have the heart-stopping effect it should. But many of the actors, such as Eddie Redmayne's Marius and Anne Hathaway's Fantine, have terrific voices and breathtaking live deliveries. And even the most disappointing performances, like Russell Crowe's Javert, which is just okay, are only disappointing because everyone else is so damn good and trying so hard. Even Jackman's more nasal, sing-to-the-back-row Broadway vocals can be forgiven for his heartfelt performance. No, the acting here is excellent, and fully deserving of a great Les Mis production, from the Bishop to the Thénardiers. That's not the problem. The singing's not the problem. The problem lies entirely with piss-poor direction from Tom Hooper, who joined that small and terrible bastion of Best Picture winners that can be safely called lucky hacks. The problem is apparent from the very beginning of the movie, during Jackman's first big ballad, which is shot beginning to end exactly like this.
What have I done? Sweet Jesus, what have I done? Become a thief in the night, become a dog on the run. And have I fallen so far? And is the hour so late that nothing remains but the cries of my hate? I'll escape now from the world of Jean Valjean. Jean Valjean is nothing now, and the story must begin.
Do you see the people's pores, sweating the sweat of sweaty men? It's in the movie of a Hooper who will not win Best Picture again. Every number from the musical is smashed up against the next one at a breakneck pace, barely rearranged for a filmic presentation, as it should have been. And all of them are shot in a canted angle, handheld close-up, intended to convey intimacy and the spotlight effect of the stage musical. It instead conveys what any first-year film student could tell you it would: the discomfort and claustrophobia reserved for horror films. It's effective only rarely, as in the deservedly lauded I Dreamed a Dream, or the less noticed, but also fitting, the approach, Who Am I? It ruins, however, Do You Hear the People Sing, Master of the House, Empty Chairs and Empty Tables, among many other scenes that are meant to have breadth and grandeur and variety of editing, space, certainly not ridiculous wide-angle lenses. The monotony of the editing and the cinematography poisons what should be tour de force performances and puts off newcomers to the beautiful story for reasons that, as reviews have shown, they may not be able to pinpoint. It pains me to say that the closer to TV quality 90s film starring Neeson and Rush is a better work because while it isn't epic in scale, at least it's competently directed and adapted as a standalone film, while this, sad to say, really isn't. By the way, why didn't they cast Jeffrey Rush as Javert again? Because he can sing, and he did the part way better than Russell Crowe. I'm just saying. It pains me to give this highly anticipated film just 2.5 stars on my cinema scale, but okay, sera. Go see it if you're a big fan of the musical and know all the words and can close your eyes and sing along. If you don't close your eyes, just like sit in the back row as far from the screen as possible. Rent it if you want to gander at the soundtrack while you work or something, but aren't that interested otherwise. It's a competent soundtrack. There's some really lovely performances in it. And skip it if you don't like singing, because there's hardly a hiccup of spoken word in the entire musical. But that's not the reason it's bad, critics. Do your homework! It's the bloody camera angles!
Mom, Dad, Phil has to go away next week, and we need someone to watch the kids. So I was wondering, would you want to?
We'd love to! They haven't seen the kids in what, a year?
I don't think these kids like me.
They have to know you better before they don't like you.
Her whole way of raising her kids is a giant in our face.
It's her generation. It's just their way.
What are you looking for, sailor? I'll help you out.
I am not eager to jump into this one. Well, I can be a bit of a silly cynic, as evidenced by the last several minutes of this video, so I will fork it over to a user review from one Chexoid, who writes, Death, life. Life is spent in opposition to death, and yet, without its twin, life would have no meaning. Death is the road we all must tread, yet so many fear to take even a single step. I was once like them, until I saw Parental Guidance starring Billy Crystal and Bette Midler.